In the previous video, we knocked down and reconstructed a grand Viking hall, comprising of wood, stone and corewood. This build sits well within the theme of the settlement, which has organically come about, and really stands out as the centrepiece. With our settlement now very much coming together, the next steps will be progressing through the game to unlock new crafting tables and building materials with which to expand into our remaining open space and upgrading existing buildings further. In order to do this, we must venture out further into areas unknown, defeating the enemies throughout the world of Valheim and the Forsaken of each biome along the way. Bonemass being our next Forsaken to destroy, and who dwells within the swamp biome. And so, we began work on gearing up for our upcoming battle. With improved weaponry in hand, we could retire our old trusty equipment that had done us well so far in our journey. Now with an iron shield to defend us and an iron mace in hand, which would prove the most effective against Bonemass's weakness to blunt damage, we were ready. After the usual administration of crops and bolstering the food supplies for the long journey ahead, a plan was decided in which we could teleport to the trader to make use of our carve boat, which was still waiting for us, and venture south to find the island where Bonemass resided. And so off we went, and as morning broke, we were back on open waters. As we made landfall within the swamp biome where Bonemass could be summoned, we quickly headed over to its location, but then realised that in our haste to hit the oceans, we'd forgotten to bring the weathered bones required to summon it, and had no means of portaling home. With a nearby Surtling spawn point, we quickly harvested their cores, given we'd need 2 of these for a portal to return back to our settlement. We then ventured further south, through the swamp until we ran back into a black forest area. From here we hoped to find a quiet meadow area in which to harvest some fine wood, but soon enough we found a plains biome well and truly surrounding the remainder of the island. We had no choice but to make a daring sprint into the plains, to make use of the birch trees here, and so while the coast was clear from any obvious dangers, we sprinted out and felled the 3 trees needed to get enough fine wood and quickly dashed back into the relative safety of the Black Forest. As we closed in back towards the edge of the swamp, we stumbled across an abandoned stone tower and, after cleaning out its inhabitants, began making use of what wood we had to construct a small outpost within which we could situate our portal. The second leg of our mishap would now begin, as we hadn't set a portal down in our settlement to begin with either, and so, running back to the swamp where our trusty carve was waiting, we hopped back into our boat and again ventured out for a journey across the oceans, heading back to the island where we had originally defeated the Elder, so that we could unlock more of the map and open up options for future exploration. Having been out on the oceans for a short while, we stumbled across the second trader in Valheim, Hildir, who I was yet to visit in the game, but given our task at hand, this would again have to wait for another day. We'd been away for several days at this point, having spent a long time traversing Valheim's oceans, and so, after extracting our new healing potions, gathering up some fine wood for a portal, again doing the usual farming management, and crafting some better recipes which would serve us well in the upcoming battle, we finally placed down our portal. And so, with our withering bones in hand, we headed straight back to Bonemass's summoning location, and after a quick bit of land flattening to ensure we didn't get stuck in the surrounding boggy waters, we summoned Bonemass to bring about its demise. Bonemass's heavy but slow swings allowed me to easily dodge and move around its attacks, and while it summoned other monsters to join the fight, they were no match for my iron mace, and within a few minutes Bonemass had been destroyed, dropping its trophy and a wishbone. This would allow us to discover the ore buried within the next biome, the mountains, but before heading there we'd have to prepare ourselves once more, and so we headed home, back to the safety of our settlement. After setting some frost resistance to brew, we headed over to the sacrificial stones to hang the trophy from our third defeated Forsaken, and took a short moment to reflect on our progress so far. Our next challenge would come from a dragon known as Moda, who resides in the mountains biome, an immensely cold place with difficult terrain. And so, looking over our map, we tried to find a suitable mountain biome with which we could conquer. At this point, I realised that the map we'd explored thus far had almost no mountain biome in it, and so I headed to the northeastern peak of our starter island and explored further afield on foot to see if I could find a mountain or spot any across the northern shores. After trekking around the coast of this newly explored island for a short while, I finally spotted what looked like a decent sized mountain biome, and so I wandered through the black forest on the outskirts of the mountain, and though it seemed like a fairly small biome, I found an abandoned tower, forcibly removed the inhabitants, and set up a portal with some materials that I'd brought with me. I then ventured through some harsh rain back to our settlement, chopping finewood on the way. I grabbed the other materials I needed and placed down a matching portal before extracting our freshly brewed frost-resistant potions. On my way to portal back toward the mountain, I got distracted as I returned to the portal hub and ended up giving it a new look with a stone flooring, corewood beams for better strength, and a slightly taller spiral to make the build look just that bit more fantastical. These small adjustments make it more in tune with the other buildings of the settlement, which also incorporate stone, though we were reaching almost full capacity of our portals, and we will likely need to do further expansions soon. Armed with our frost-resistant potions and plenty of food to keep us going, we headed back to the mountain biome and ventured into the freezing peaks high up in the sky. Before long, we ran into our first wolves, but easily dispatched them with some well-timed blocks and clubs from our iron mace. And so we pressed on, exploring the small mountainous region to see what other creatures, treasures, and monuments we could uncover. Suddenly, howling echoed around us as we were being hunted by a pack of wolves. As several of the beasts closed in on me, I knew I had to find high ground, and, after a nearby rock failed to keep their attacks at bay, I staggered down the mountain, conserving as much stamina as I could, before heading into the edges of the Black Forest to climb a nearby rock, which was just tall enough to keep me out of harm's way. From this position, I unleashed arrow after arrow as the blood-hungry wolves desperately surrounded the plinth. This short raid event allowed me to collect a considerable amount of wolf hide, fangs and meat. The perfect start to my exploration in the mountains, as stressful as it had been. As the raid ended, I climbed back up the mountain, only to be met by a ferocious blizzard, but, with my frost resistant potions still working, I pressed on and began harvesting a new type of rock, obsidian, which would unlock stronger arrows and more crafting table upgrades. I also battled with drakes, frost-ridden dragon-like creatures who circled me from the skies and rained down balls of frozen ice. Their freeze glands would be useful in more advanced cooking recipes and making frost arrows, which could be used to slow enemies while dealing frost damage. After a short while, I'd exhausted the small biome of both resources and its wildlife, and so I headed back down the mountain to return home, drop off my loot, do a spot of farming, and upgrade my crafting table using our newly mined obsidian. I then headed back to reclaim the resources from our portal, as with the mountain being fully explored and no silver in sight to return for, we'd need to find another mountain to conquer. And so, we returned back to the northern coast to the starter island, scouting for any silhouettes of mountains across the oceans to the north. As we came up to the northwestern edge of the island, we mounted a rock and saw what looked to be an impressive mountain in the far distance, further northwest, even larger than two other mountains we have spotted thus far. Running the short trip back home, we got busy preparing the parts we needed to craft ourselves a new carve, and, setting off in the middle of the night, we were back on the open waters, heading to what we hoped to be a much larger and bountiful mountain biome. After making landfall and setting up my usual mini roundhouse to house a portal and place to rest, we headed up our newly discovered mountain as morning broke, looking forward to a full day of exploration, battling and mining. As another successful day came to a close, we had amassed dozens of onion seeds, some silver ore we'd managed to mine before being seen off by a roaming stone golem, plenty of wolf hides, fangs and meat, as well as a couple dozen freeze glands, though we were yet to come across any drake trophies which would need to complete the next tier of armour. And so we head back to our settlement to recoup, before another day of exploration. We spent the evening farming our newly acquired seeds, smelting the small amount of silver we'd got, and furnishing our Viking hall with a new rug to boot, before crafting a new spear made from the fangs of the fallen wolves of the mountains. Day 76 was quickly upon us, and so we once again portaled back to the foot of the mountain before climbing our way up in search of lots more silver and what would turn into several trips transporting the ore. Heading back to our settlement with 3 stacks of silver ore to smelt, I used the leftovers from the first batch to build a butcher's table, the second upgrade to the cauldron, and checked out the new cooking recipes which came with it. After a bit more smelting, I was soon back up the mountain, and just later that morning I was once again being hunted by wolves. Finding a nearby rock to climb as a safety net, I gave battle to the onslaught of wolves, spearing one after the other as they snapped and snarled at me, landing the occasional bite. In the massacre, I managed to collect a wolf trophy, which unlocks the wolf cape, and which would allow me to produce a frost-resistant piece of clothing, which didn't come with a speed penalty, unlike the wolf armour. As the tirade of wolves seemed to be unending, I eventually wore out and found myself on little remaining health, and so, taking to the top of the nearby rock for protection, I waited for the event to subside, before dismounting and finishing off the last of the pack with some vicious blows from my iron mace. Once again I had netted a significant amount of hides, fangs and meat. Not a bad start to another day of exploration. Having cooked up some improved recipes, crafted a wolf fur cape to remove our dependency on frost-resistant potions, upgraded our troll tunic to a wolf plate chest piece, and prepared a new portal ready for the upcoming fight against the dragon Moda, we headed out to our trusty carve and set sail for the distant mountain where the beast dwelled. Portaling back to our settlement, we went about the usual farming activities, unlocking new recipes from our new ripe onions, and then made some minor upgrades to our blacksmith. Similar to the portal hub, we added a stone base to bring the building up to speed with the rest of the settlement. Pressing on with further exploration in the mountains, we delved into a frost cave for the first time, finding crystals and fighting off lots of bats which thrived in the cave's darkness, before descending deeper and deeper until we came across several ruinous halls, some of which held treasures and piles of meat, presumably for the inhabitants, while others opened into grand crypts laden with red drapes and Fenris hair decoration. As we exited the now empty caves, we ventured through the night to explore another 2 caves, where we quickly ran into some new monsters to tackle with. Ulves, which were more agile wolf-like creatures, and cultists, who seemed to be cloaked werewolves that could wield the conjuration of fire magic. After looting plenty of treasures, red jute, Fenris hair, claws, and entrails from the heaps of meat piles, we eventually found ourselves above a massive frosten cavern, guarded by a stone golem. Not knowing what else lurked in the darkness, I headed out the cave and back home, smug with the vast amounts of loot we had collected. Making use of these resources, we upgraded to a pair of Fenris leggings, and then headed off into the night to the mountain where Moda was said to reside, in search of 2 things: drakes for their trophies, which we needed for a helmet upgrade, and dragon egg locations, which we'd need 3 of to summon the next Forsaken. Having placed 2 of the 3 dragon eggs that we needed, we were now prepped and ready to summon and bring the fight to Moda. I headed back home to make use of the many freeze glands I'd harvested to make ice cream, a nice mid-game high stamina food recipe. As our search for a Drake trophy continued, I thought I'd take a break at our settlement, and so I used the downtime to add a further upgrade to our portal hub, given that we'd earlier spotted plenty of plains biomes and the bog witch on our previous explorations, so we'd soon enough be needing more and more portals. The added plinth in the centre of the hub has added an extra 4 portals, bringing our capacity now to 11, making this a well utilised plot of land, and hopefully enough to see us through the remainder of the playthrough. We slightly increased the height of the spiral further, giving the building an even more impressive skyline, and I added a well in the middle of the plinth, fitted with a blue light source, which adds a mysterious and fantasy feel, almost like there is a central source of energy which the portals rely on, and which really glows at night for a pretty awesome effect. Thanks as always for watching. Be sure to subscribe for more Valheim content, as well as future episodes in this series, and be sure to like the video to support the channel. Until next time.